This is a reproduction of the Oval Office used by the President of the United States in the White House. The Oval Office itself is located in the West Wing of the Executive Mansion. Built in 1902, it has been occupied by every president since Theodore Roosevelt. The way you see the office here is the way it looked during the administration of Lyndon Baines Johnson, except for one detail. This is 1/8 smaller than the real Oval Office. The desk is the one Mr. Johnson worked at from the time he served in the United States Senate and through the White House years. It generally appeared this way, with considerable materials stacked and waiting for his attention. Items tabbed with red were urgent. Many laws of the Great Society were signed here. The remote control units on the desk and on a small table beside the rocking chair would activate the 3-screen TV console. The President would watch the news on 3 networks, selecting the audio he preferred. The rocking chair was President Johnson's, as was the marble-top table, specially designed with a call directory telephone mounted in the drawer. The panel of buttons gave him instant communication with members of his staff. The television console and the teletype machine next to it are reproductions of the ones used in the office. The service flags were gifts from the armed forces to the Commander-in-Chief. In late October 1968, less than 3 months before he left the White House, the 36th President of the United States reflected on the Oval Office as it looks to the man who works here.
No president ever came to this office on a platform of doing what was wrong. But every man who's ever occupied this office or sat at this desk or reclined in this chair has been dedicated to doing what he believed was for the best interest of the people of this country. I'm utterly convinced that when any man takes the oath of office as president, he is determined to do what is right as God gives him the wisdom to know the right. Most people come into the office with great dreams, and they leave it with many satisfactions and some disappointments, and always some of their dreams have not come true. And I'm no exception. But I'm so grateful and so proud that I've had my chance, and as to how successful we've been in doing the greatest good for the greatest number, the people themselves and their posterity must ultimately decide.
The struggle for progressive change is continuous. There are times when a watershed is reached. And I think the past 5 years have been such a time.
Most presidents are just happy to have 1 or 2 bits of legislation that endure, that have a historical resonance to it. Johnson slammed out bill after bill, act after act.
Voting rights, doors to public service, are open at last to all Americans regardless of their color.
Abraham Lincoln freed the blacks, but it was Lyndon Johnson who led them into the voting booths, gave them at last the power that made them a part of American political life.
He helped free not just a people, but he liberated a nation.
Maybe the greatest impact that the Great Society had has been the Medicare program.
Medicare, that we were unable to pass for so many years, is now a part of American life.
The increase in life expectancy is clearly a direct function of those programs.
He had this passion for education.
School children all over America tonight are receiving federal assistance to go to good schools.
One day we had nothing for elementary and secondary education. The next day we had $1 billion.
60% of today's college students are using Great Society loan, grant, and work-study programs to help pay their way through college. Before Lyndon Johnson, there was no Kennedy Center, there was no Hirshhorn Sculpture Museum and Garden, there was no Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which has spawned several hundred television stations and radio stations all over the country.
Part of the American earth has been permanently set aside for the American public.
Not only did he create scenic hiking trails and wilderness areas, but he went after polluters and started enacting landmark legislation on behalf of the environment.
This nation is close to full employment, with less unemployment than we've had at any time in almost 20 years.
When Lyndon Johnson became president, the poverty rate was about 22% in this country. When he left office 5 years later, the poverty rate was 13%. That decline is the greatest one-time reduction in poverty in the history of this country.
With the exception of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, the Great Society and all that encompassed was the most momentous thing that happened in domestic policy in the United States in the 20th century.
My term of office has been marked by a series of challenges, both at home and throughout the world. In meeting some of these challenges, the nation has found a new confidence. In meeting others, it new turbulence and doubt and fear and hate. The quest for peace tonight continues in Vietnam.
Just as Johnson dominated domestic life during the Great Society years, the cabinet was his, the Congress was his, the laws were his, the helicopters were his, so once he committed himself to the escalation of the war in Vietnam, that war became his.
I regret more than any of you know that it has not been possible to restore peace to South Vietnam. If the nation's problems are continuing, so are this great nation's assets. Our economy, the democratic system, our sense of exploration symbolized most recently by the wonderful flight of the Apollo 8 in which all Americans took great pride.
It served American business, it served American prestige abroad, it served the national psyche, so to speak, and it was something he was very much committed to.
Most all of my life as a public official has been spent here in this building, and now it's time to leave.
He wanted to use every minute to achieve good for America.
The world today is more a reflection of Lyndon Johnson than of anything else that's happened in the last 50 years.
I hope it may be said 100 years from now that by working together we help to make our country more just. That's what I hope. But I believe that at least it will be said that we tried.